This isn't about religion. Not a sermon, not a lecture, not some esoteric fantasy. This is about a man who slipped past the veil, past what we call life, and came back with answers. His name was Edgar Cayce. And what he saw, most of us only feel in the dead of night, when the world goes quiet, and one question burns in the dark. What happens next? Cayce wasn't a mystic, not in the way you'd think. No robes, no chants, no grand promises. Just a soft-spoken man from Kentucky, a country boy with quiet eyes. But something happened to him, something that changed everything. He called it a sleep state, but those who heard his words knew it was more, much more, because in those moments he left. His body stayed behind, breathing, still, while his consciousness drifted. No metaphor, no meditation, he was gone. He described it simply. First a ringing, then light, then nothing, nobody, no time. Just being. And then, the real journey began. He didn't see with his eyes. He knew, clearer than anything in this world. The soul doesn't tear free, he said. It slips out, like taking off a heavy coat. Strange at first, then light. He watched himself from above, saw the room, the people, their questions hang in the air. And then the shift. No walls, no floor, no ceiling. Just light. A vast, endless expanse, no sound, yet every answer humming in the air. Thoughts didn't come as words. They arrived, whole, complete, like memories he'd always known. And in that light, others. Not angels. Not ghosts. Presences. Souls. Beings. No names, no faces, just recognition deep, ancient, like meeting an old friend in a dream. There are no words there, he whispered, only feeling, only memory. And then, the review. Not judgment, not punishment. Remembrance. Every moment of his life, not as scenes, but as echoes. Every joy, every hurt, every word that ever left his lips, rippling back through him. But not just his feelings. Theirs too. Every person he'd ever touched. Every heart he'd lifted or bruised. He felt all. Not as guilt, as truth. You don't just see what you did, he said. You feel what they felt, and in that you understand. This was just the beginning. And if you're still listening, if these words aren't just passing through you, then maybe you're ready for what comes next. Because Cayce didn't just glimpse the afterlife, he lived it. And what he found there changes everything. When Cayce returned from those depths, he wasn't the same. Something lingered in his eyes, a quiet knowing, like a man who'd woken from a dream only to find the real world thinner. True life isn't here, he'd say. We're just visitors, students. And it wasn't poetry. It was fact. Because in those trances, he didn't just leave his body. He walked the landscapes beyond. Real places. Not heaven, not hell. Layers. Some were vast and still, like a lake at dawn. Others pulsed with movement. Currents of souls flowing like rivers. And the strangest part? You didn't go somewhere. You arrived where you already belonged. It's not about punishment or reward, Cayce explained. It's about resonance. The soul finds its own frequency, like a note returning to its chord. He called it the sphere of light. No gates. No angels with scrolls. Just light, alive and aware, wrapping around each soul like water, taking the shape of their essence. And in that light, truth. Not the kind you speak, the kind you feel. Every lie ever told, every act of love, every hidden cruelty, none of it hidden anymore. Not because some god demanded answers, because the soul, finally free, remembered itself. You stand naked there, Cayce said, not your body, yourself. And the light doesn't judge, it just shows. He described souls who crumpled under the weight of their own choices, not from wrath, but from the sheer force of understanding. A man who cheated his brother, feeling the betrayal from the other side. A mother who'd abandoned her child, drowning in the loneliness she'd caused. No fire, no demons, just consequences, not as punishment, but as awakening. The worst suffering there, Cayce murmured, is realizing how much love you could have given and didn't. But then, the other side. Souls who'd lived gently, who'd loved even when it cost them. For them, the light wasn't a mirror, it was an embrace. A homecoming so deep, so right, that Cayce's voice would break describing it. They expanded, he said, like they'd been holding their breath for lifetimes and finally breathed. And between these realms, movement, souls shifting, growing, choosing. Because nothing was fixed. No eternal damnation. No static paradise. Just progress. Some souls stay close to earth, Cayce noted, still tangled in grief, or rage, or fear. They linger in the gray spaces, not lost, just waiting. Others? They plunge deeper, drawn toward brighter layers, like moths to a flame they'd forgotten was theirs. But the most shocking thing, many chose to come back, not forced, not punished. Called by a longing deeper than fear, a need to try again. Cayce saw souls preparing for new lives, picking parents, pains, even their deaths, not as victims, but as artists, crafting the exact journey their spirits needed. You think you're here by accident? He'd ask. No, you chose this, every scar, every joy, all of it, to remember who you really are. And that's when the real revelation hit. None of this is random, not your birth, not your struggles, not the people who've hurt you, or the ones who've saved you. It's all a conversation, the soul's dialogue with itself. Which means one thing, you're exactly where you're meant to be. But the journey doesn't end here. Because Cayce saw something else, something that changes everything about how we live. The moment of death itself, and what happens right after. Edgar Cayce's most chilling accounts weren't about the afterlife itself, but the crossing. That razor's edge between here and there, he described it not as an ending, but as an unfolding, like a flower finally feeling sunlight after lifetimes as a seed. Dying isn't what you think, he whispered. It's not leaving, it's arriving. Here's what he saw. The moment the soul steps free, gentler than a sigh, no pain, no tunnel of light, just release, like slipping off shoes that never quite fit. At first, you hover. You see your body, strangely distant, already foreign, loved ones weeping. The room you've known your whole life, suddenly small, like a stage after the play ends. And then the pull, not from above, from within. A warmth deeper than memory, calling you home. You don't go to the light, Cayce insisted, you remember it, like a song you'd forgotten you knew by heart. But here's where it chills the blood. You're not alone when it happens. Entities gather, not with wings or halos, but as presences, their very nearness vibrating with a love so vast it rewrites every fear you've ever had. They don't speak, Cayce said, they resonate. And in that frequency, every question you've ever had answers itself. Then comes the review, not some divine courtroom, just truth. Your whole life flashes, not as scenes, but as energy. Every moment you touched another soul radiates back to you. The time you made a child laugh, you feel their joy in your bones. The cruel word you spat in anger, it burns like you swallowed it yourself. No wrath, no punishment, just cause and effect, stripped bare. A man who starved thousands saw each hungry face, felt their hollow stomachs as his own, Cayce recounted. Not because God punished him, because for the first time he let himself feel. But the real shock, most souls don't weep for their sins. They weep for their wasted love, for hands they didn't hold, for forgiveness they didn't give, for all the times they mistook being needed for being alive. And then a choice. Some souls surge forward, drawn toward realms so luminous, Cayce could only call them the color of God's thoughts. Others linger, bound by unfinished business, by guilt, by the sheer terror of being truly seen. They haunt themselves, he said, not with chains, but with refusals, to let go, to be loved, to admit they were wrong. But the light never fades, never forces, it waits, like a mother at the door. And when the soul finally yields, when it stops clinging to the ghost of who it thought it was, that's when the real journey begins. Because Cayce saw beyond the review, beyond the light, to where souls prepare, not for judgment, but for another descent into flesh. And what he learned about why we come back will shatter everything you think you know about life's purpose. The greatest lie we've ever been told about reincarnation? That it's punishment. Edgar Cayce saw the truth, and it changes everything. He watched souls line up to return to Earth, not fleeing hell, not dragged by karma, but volunteering. Eager as soldiers enlisting for a war only they could fight. They lean forward, he said, like runners at the starting block, not with fear, with purpose. Here's what really happens in the between. Souls don't just get a next life. They craft it like architects drawing blueprints of pain and grace. Parents are chosen, not by chance, but for the exact friction needed to sand rough edges into brilliance. Poverty? Chronic pain? Betrayal? Requested, not as curses, as tools. Cayce described a soul selecting a future mother's alcoholism. So, I'll learn to find worth beyond others' brokenness. Another picking a lifetime of illness to stop rushing and finally feel. The hardest lives, he murmured, are often the souls showing off, like climbers choosing the steepest peak just to prove they can. But the most shocking revelation? Your enemies are soul agreements. That coworker who undermines you, the lover who shattered your heart, old contracts written in the between space where grudges don't exist, only growth. A man saw his murderer in the light, Cayce recounted. And instead of rage, he thanked him. I needed to stop clinging to that body, he said. You freed me. Yet here's what haunts. We forget the plan. Birth isn't just entry into a body. It's amnesia. The crying infant doesn't remember choosing these parents. The bullied teen can't recall requesting this lesson in resilience. That's the point. You can't fake courage when you know it's a test, Cayce explained. So the veil drops. And in that darkness, you find who you really are. Which means your deepest wounds. Sacred assignments, that anxiety you can't shake, the loneliness that gnaws, the dream that won't die, soul memory, faint echoes of the life you meant to live. And when you stumble toward love despite every reason not to, when you create beauty amid pain, that's not random, that's mission accomplished. Cayce's most radical truth? Earth isn't a school. It's a forge where souls don't just learn, they alchemize, turning the lead of suffering into the gold of wisdom, not to escape life, but to embrace it. Which means right now, exactly as you are, you're winning. Not when the pain ends, because it exists. And you're still choosing love, still breathing, still here. Edgar Cayce's final vision didn't come during a trance. It came as he lay dying, his body failing, his breath shallow. When the veil grew so thin, he stopped describing the afterlife and started speaking from it. You think you're waiting for some grand awakening, he rasped. But the call isn't coming. It's already here. He pointed to the ordinary moments, the stranger's eyes that felt too familiar, the song that cracked your chest open for no reason, the deja vu that lingers like a word on the tip of your tongue. These aren't coincidences, he insisted. They're tugboats, your soul pulling you back on course. Here's the secret he took 14,000 readings to understand. The afterlife isn't a place, it's a frequency, and you can touch it right now, not through rituals, not by leaving your body, but in the split second when you forgive what shouldn't be forgiven. You choose kindness when rage would be easier. You stare at the stars and remember something you can't explain. That ache? Cayce whispered, that's not loneliness. It's homesickness for the self you haven't grown into yet. His deathbed revelation. We aren't here to transcend life. We're here to fall in love with it, broken parts and all. The divine isn't beyond the mess, he said. It's in the mess, the hospital rooms, the dirty dishes, the silent car rides where everything changes. Which means your darkest hour isn't the obstacle, it's the path, that thing you're most afraid to face. Your soul's exact curriculum. Cayce's last words hold the key. When you stop asking why this is happening to you and start feeling what's happening through you, that's when the veil dissolves. So breathe, look down at your hands, the ones that have held both joy and grief. They're not accidents, they're artifacts. Proof of a promise you made in the light before you chose to forget, before you chose this. If any part of this stirred something in you, a memory, a question, or even quiet recognition, don't let it fade. Pause for just one breath and ask yourself, what if this is my soul remembering? Then, mark this moment. Leave a comment below. Share one word that resonated, or simply sit in the stillness. The first step toward awakening isn't belief, it's curiosity.